Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. This is a requested video by Just123. I get that reference. Um, Asked, can you do a solo survival steel path guide to find good rooms, tile sets, and manage enemy spawns efficiently? Alright, so there's going to be. We'll talk loosely about it, and then I'll show a couple of locations, say if you're just trying to do like a farm that I've used and some of the logic that I've used to try to manage spawns, if you will. So this isn't going to be focused particularly on farming, but say more about surviving, if you will. Um, the number one thing that affects kill rate more or less is like three things together, all at the same thing in terms of like what affects spawn rates, and just to list them out, and in no particular order, is a clean tile. So a tile that doesn't have a bunch of stuff that the enemies can get caught on. I know, hot take. Two, the room that you're in has adjacent rooms that are close to you. Generally, enemies will not spawn in the room that you are in, but in adjacent rooms and will run into the room that you're in. So, somewhat small room, because the simple logic is the closer the enemies can spawn to you, the faster you can kill them. It's also easier on the graphics card. And the faster you kill them, you want enemies dead as fast as possible to get that kill rate up. Because the next thing that comes along is, and that's the third thing, is basically unimpeded access to killing enemies. And they need to have a blind spot to spawn in. Okay, so I'm going to show a couple rooms, and actually, I'm going to go a little bit further than that. Let's get pursuit. And we are going to go triple radar. So we've got the enemy radar aura, vigilante pursuit, and obviously we have enemy radar on the animal as well. So it's what, 93 meters, which is absurd. But when I am looking for a room, not that I would generally go look specifically for it, but if we have a room that we're using to farm and the spawns are routinely sucking on a map, this is one of the things I will do to try to fish out what exactly is going on. Now, most tile sets don't have a ton of stuff on them, so that's not really going to be a big issue. It's more of an issue on Lua. But say if there's like a bunch of stairs, there's a bunch of guardrails, things that the enemies can bump into and catch on, and if the enemies bump into each other, one of the enemies will like move off and can sometimes get stuck in like a guardrail occasionally. It's not super common, but I've seen stuff that stuck in guardrails before. So the biggest thing is going to be the enemies can spawn near you, and they have an unimpeded path to quickly get to you. So we're going to spawn in on a node, and hopefully it's going to be RNG. One of my favorite spots to farm Steel Essence with clanmates. I've enjoyed it tremendously. We've done several 1 hour. We've done like 5-6 hours runs if we're just trying to hang out and do like Steel Essence farm or whatever. And the resources on Jupiter aren't horrible. Like alloy plate, hexanon, neural sensor, salvage. It could be worse. So we're going to jump into Kameria. And hopefully I get it on the first try. It's a 50-50 shot. Okay, got the right one. Money. So this entrance where it's got the little spaceport ramp or whatever this is, into this ramp is a really, really good spot for like doing like a base survival if you're doing like a farm. Even with regular like solo play, and we'll go into that. But the reason why this spot is good, and you're going to have to look for it in whatever mission you're doing. Generally, the issue is a room you need to find, right? And that's what you were asking about. But there's characteristics, and this is an easy one to point out. So we have this room here. It has 3 entrances. And then there's the ramp here. Now, the ramp isn't too important, except for the fact that enemies generally don't spawn in your starting area. Obviously, there's a couple of locations in the void where you'll drop into like a normal tile. But like generally you have a starting area, and it's like a special tile that doesn't really exist elsewhere on the map. You'll get one. Generally, enemies will have like a no spawn perimeter around where you spawn at. And it seems to be near permanent with no exceptions, unless it's like maybe like an acolyte or something. So on this map, this entire area is a no spawn point. Everything here, enemies won't spawn here. Occasionally you'll get like a single, but most of the time it's an enemy getting yanked by like a specter or something and drug out here, or an enemy like sprinting past. But generally enemies won't spawn in your spawn area. So with this area, what makes it a great area to farm in is that these connectors. So like if I'm out on the ramp, right? Like I'm out here, enemies can spawn as close as here, 68 meters away. And I'm going to spawn in some enemies, or I'm going to trigger the survival, and we'll be able to see where they spawn because I'm running so much loot radar. And you'll be able to see where they start spawning, like in these areas right here. So in order for me to attack an enemy, all an enemy has to do is spawn in, load in, run down here, and then I kill it right here. So the thing that can increase and minimize the time difference for being able to kill is you need to be able to kill the enemies as fast as possible from wherever their spawn is. And enemies generally will not spawn in wherever you're looking. So with this, if we're trying to do a farm and we want the spawn rate to be as high as possible, we will actually stand back here. So everything in this tunnel is fair game, right? And then there's also the area in front of us, which is currently not connected, or it is connected, but it's locked down by the alarm. So I'm going to leave the map up and take note of where stuff is spawning in. Right? So there's nothing, nothing, nothing. You see everything spawn in, and it just gets to run right at me. And I can shoot everything in here. Now, as I'm killing stuff, notice where the stuff is spawning at. In front of me, it's spawning way far away, but the stuff off to the side is right upstairs and is running right at me. So it's a pretty good spawn location. And this is generally the thing we're trying to abuse the most. There's obviously some things that we'll talk about that it can increase it even more. But as I move closer, you can see the enemies spawning further down the tunnel. But if I back up and I start shooting enemies, as they die, the enemies start spawning further away, or start spawning closer. So we'll get our reload, kill some nerds, their group. We'll be able to see where they spawn. And they moved closer up the tunnels. As we back up further, let's see if it changes. We'll slightly into the next room. Now we have a ton of range, so we can see where they're spawning at. And remember those little pockets back there that I was telling you? They're starting to spawn in there now. Almost exclusively, so I would want to use like an AoE weapon here to be able to kill enemies. But you can see how the spawn rate is, or the spawn locations are being manipulated. Let's kill some more. And we'll try to go further back, see if we can't get more stuff to spawn closer. They've now moved into the rooms off to the side, which they were spawning at before, but it's more noticeable slightly. And the spawn rate from what's in front of us has slowed down. So let's go down here and we'll find another room with connectors. Alright, this is a longer room. We'll wait for them to get it to us. Actually, let me get visual on the entire room so we can see exact location. Okay, so let's kill a little bit, and we'll see where stuff is spawning. Stuff has to run toward us. A couple of things are spawning behind us. But you can see, because of the size of the room, stuff is having to run to us from almost other rooms. Now let's back up. We'll continue killing. And you can see a group of enemies just spawned around the corner. An enemy right there. This one just spawned right around the corner because I went into the other room. It spawned right here. This guy. But it's because I went into the other room. So let's kill some enemies. We'll hop back in the next room. Enemies are still spawning from further away, but we're starting to get spawns closer to us. That will increase our kill rate. And obviously if I had brought in a more appropriate weapon. Now let's back up even more. That Destra Prime hitting pretty good with that raw damage build. Alright, let's kill. Go back around the corner. Alright, enemies are now... Was that guy just chilling there? Let's see what he's doing. Oh, he spawned upstairs, didn't he? No? Okay, now we have guys spawning in the elevator. Let's see if that unsticks him. But this with like an AoE weapon where you're like over here, if you're trying to do like a long survival, you would literally need to not be able to see the enemies. You could stand here, spam. This is the philosophy behind like a kill hall. Or like a, I forget exactly what the term is, but like a hallway where you would kill enemies, but you stand back in a small room. And let me see if I can RNG... like an example on like an Orokin room, right? Like an Orokin tile set. Generally with Orokin tile sets, the name of the game is the number of doors and open space next to it. There is a pretty famous room where it's the 2-level room with a bunch of doors everywhere. So you got the one coming in the center and the 3 up top. And the stairs on the side of it. Enemies can run straight in. They don't use the stairs generally. And then there's also the 2-tier room. This room is another good room to farm in, because the rooms that connect, enemies can spawn over here because they can't see you, right? So what you're looking for kill rate has a lot to do with how fast you can kill stuff. The more you can kill, the more damage you'll do, the more resources you'll farm, and more importantly, if you're doing a Steel Pass survival, the more airdrops you'll have. So, okay, again, we'll do, we'll have to watch the map as it's up. And you can see enemies have spawned in right here, so let's kill some. Okay, we can see where they're spawning, and they're spawning super far away, because we're in this room. Now let's go back here and see if we can't force closer spawns. This guy spawned in our blind spot, even though we were in the same room. Forgot to bring acceleration. Alright, now we can see stuff spawned in right around the corner. Remember, we have a 90-meter range. If we can see these guys, we can see the ones spawning over here. So the more blind spots, it's a very campy thing trying to increase spawn rates like this. Generally, you just want to run around and have a good time. But if you're trying to like extend the run and like stretch out your build a bit, this is kind of how you got to do it. It's not the only way. Obviously, having a stronger build works. And doing Steel Path increases the number of spawns, makes dealing with survival significantly easier. If you can deal with the enemy scaling, I don't know what your level is, but survivals are a lot less of a hassle as far as air supply, because there's so many more spawns. So more spawns, more killing, more air supply drops, so it's not as much of a hassle. Obviously, it's supposed to be a harder challenge in terms of like level. So, alright, let's kill some more. Kill, kill, kill. And let's see if we can catch another spawn. Alright, we had a guy spawn behind us, but because we weren't looking, he was able to spawn. Let's kill him, see if we can get another one. With this super long quads reload. Alright, on the second tier, we're getting enemies spawning in here. And that guy just spawned in. So we're getting them closer and closer. If we're running an AoE, ideally we would want them to spawn in and just die instantly. So there is a bit of spawn manipulation, but it's really to get your kill rate up, and this will do a lot. Running Steel Pass survivals, this will do a ton for making the survivals easier. Again, more spawns, more airdrop, or more air supply, blah blah blah. Hold on, Acolyte. So, easy enough. Obviously, I needed a better weapon there. They were grouping up too much, and this is one of the problems with the Destra. But that one shot on the Acolyte, though. Let me grab a better weapon. So the thing that you're looking for is ease of access. Blind spots are pretty good as long as it doesn't involve like obstructions. Anything that can get in the way tends to be an issue. But one of the easiest ways to like up the spawn rate is to allow the enemies to spawn closer. That's why the kill hall is a thing. So you're looking for unobstructed big room with a place that you can go that has blind spots, and you go out in waves and kill the enemies, or you have like a quote unquote a circuit where you chase down the spawns, because the enemy's not going to spawn enemies everywhere. It's going to try to spawn them next to you, but the issue becomes if the tile set is too big. And I can show you that. That was actually pretty notorious on Terror Rim. And we'll go there, show an infested tile set. Terror Rim, an Orokin Derelict. If you go into too big of a room, it's fine for the infested because they're melee. But if you go into a bigger room with Corpus or say like Corrupted doing like a Mott survival, it can kind of be an issue because the enemy can shoot you from so far away. Obviously, they do have a range that they can shoot you at. But if you had to make a choice between being in a smaller room where they can't shoot you, or being in a big room where they can shoot you from far away, like this room tends to be pretty good. You can do like a lap around it. So I've used this one before for like a couple hour runs. It's pretty solid. But if I'm trying to do like a really long survival, I've actually got Shattering Impact on here. You would want to go to maybe like a spawn location so you have like a safe spot behind you. It would also help out immensely with say like Acolyte spawns. You can figure out where the Acolyte spawns. They have specific spots in each tile where they'll spawn at. Not like the entire tile set and as a whole, but literally in each room, there are like designated spots for the Acolyte to spawn. And that can help out a lot in terms of survival, in terms of not being surprised. So like this room would be pretty good for kill rate because there's so many doors accessing it. And if you have like an AoE weapon, like a Brahma, a Tsar, or hell, even an Envoy that's built for gas. I've even used like a Tenet Archiplasmor that's built for gas in here because there's so many long straights. Like there's a lot of angles where you can like shoot all the way down this. And you can knock out like 20, 30 enemies at once and it will just spawn in new enemies immediately. This is one of the ways that you can get like pretty insane spawn rates. But also having, like, say if you're doing a solo survival and you're struggling to get to like keep your life support up, having a place that's always near life support, as long as you can get to the next life support, and when you trigger the next life support, the amount never goes down between life supports, you'll be able to survive, right? I mean, that's simple math. If the life supports take a couple minutes to get, like, spawned in, if you can last that and have the same amount of life support and it's not going down between each life support, like, you're golden. That's all you need to do to be able to survive. But the big thing is probably mobility, where you are in a room. So it's very, very loose. This isn't really information that DE like shares. But obviously people have figured out like things that appear to matter. So if you can do a survival on Steel Path versus the regular star chart, it would be preferable to do Steel Path. But the big thing is a room, to be in a room that has a ton of access, as much stuff as possible. Like, obviously this tree isn't ideal, but if you notice, my life support really isn't going down. Obviously it's early in the mission, so it's not a great example, but you know what I mean, where it's like this life support's actually going up. So it's ease of access. Generally people like big rooms with lots of doorways, so the enemies can spawn in from all directions, and they'll use like something like a group. Like I've had pretty successful survival runs with using like a ranged nidus, if you will. And I would just plant my ass like right here and just spam my 2, pull everything in on the tile, and then kill them right here. And I would just sit on top of my 4 right there. Because if you have range abilities, a bigger room benefits you, because they'll run in instantly from the outside, and then you'll yank them in. So one of the things also that can help you up your kill rate is having a grouping ability. So like a Vauban pays dividends as like a member of the team, but you were asking about solo. So anything that can speed enemies up, like even Nova's good at this. Though sometimes she can get enemies stuck on stuff. Nidus is really, really solid on this. Equinox has a speed up as well. And that can up your kill rate by reducing the amount of time that it takes for the enemy to get to you. So in terms of rooms, you want to be adjacent to a big room or in a big room. So either you're in a small room directly connected to a big room, where they're outside of what you're looking at, there are a ton of blind spots. So enemies can spawn close to you, because if you notice when we were in that big room, occasionally an enemy would spawn in, like in a blind spot. But if you're running around and you're just turning and looking at stuff, the enemy's not going to spawn in right in front of you. Like literally, physically right in front of you. It'll spawn in, like on that Orokin mission, 15 meters behind you. But it's got to be because you didn't look at it for a couple seconds. Like they're not going to spawn in like 2 meters in front of you, right? And also one of the things that appears to be a bit of an issue is when you are running an incredibly fast frame. That last rule sometimes doesn't apply because it just takes them so long to load in. I've run into enemies that are loading in with like a speed Neja or like a Gauss. So it's not a hard and fast rule. But the general rule that you're looking for is a small room that is directly adjacent to a big room with a ton of connections to it, or a small room with a ton of connections and blind spots. Let me show a room that's actually really good for that. Talking about Lua. There's a room that is a really good example. Okay, conjunction survival. This might take me a second to look. It's the Octavia, not the Octavia, the agility drift room, where it's got the organ, Where you have to stand in the pipes, not the one where it's like the Simon Says thing. That one's really, really good for spawning because the enemies can spawn really close to you and they're adjacent to a bunch of there's a bunch of blind spots like this room as well. All right, we'll go to this. So the enemies are spawning in further down. So the enemies behind us are able to spawn right about here. There's even an enemy that loaded out, so enemies are spawning in front of, or not, are walking in front of us. They're trying to make it look like the tile's busy, but you turn around and look, there's nothing over here. So we've got a ton of range. We'll try to keep them in. Okay, way in front of us. Enemy spawned in. A bunch of enemies spawned in over here. In this area, look, they're all still standing here. So if you're trying to get your spawn rate up, one of the things that can help is just moving around a big tile. Like, make like a circuit or something around it. And you have to sort of finesse it and figure out which one works for you. Because obviously, the faster you can kill, the more the circuit feels good. If you're having issues with killing quickly, like say the enemy levels are getting high, then being in a small room with a ton of blind spots, or that's connected to a big room with a ton of blind spots, also helps a tremendous amount. But okay, you can see right around the corner, enemies spawned in. Let's see where they spawned in at. Here. But if we jump through, look, there's nothing. And there won't be anything. So let's see if it pruned. A lot of the enemies should still be here. So you can actually use this going back and forth mechanism when doing a survival. By grouping enemies in 2 rooms. And what you'll do is you'll like run over here and kill like a couple of enemies, and then you'll go back into the next room. So enemies behind. Okay, so right... Hold on, where is it? Oh, it died already. So you can go back and forth as enemies spawn in. So you're always fighting like fresh spawns. And as you can see on the map, enemies, not this one, but that one. There was an enemy that spawned in right here. And again, because of the spawns, because they try to spawn them close, you can just run past everybody, and now everybody's chilling down here. You can use that to group. As you'll see, they'll run toward me. But they'll all be behind me. Now, there's another enemy that spawned in over here. Let's see where it was. Right about here. So about 50 meters. It says 46, so let's just round up and be generous and say 50. Alright, so they're spawning almost into the next room and in the next room. Let's move further to the middle, see if that affects the spawn. Ooh, I need... I was running my mouth. Sorry about that. Yep. But that's how you would go about testing where the spawns are. And you would know where in the room you need to stand so you don't interrupt the spawns coming from the other room. That big room, I've had really good luck in, especially with like a team. Easy 1 hour, 2 hour run. Um, but you would need to be able to. The bigger the room, the faster your kill rate needs to be. So as you're going through, you can catch the loading in of everything because you could see where they're loading in. And you want that to be as close as possible. So when I stood up on the top and I moved too close to the door, the enemies were spawning too far away to get to me within like 5 to 6 seconds. So that's why people do like a smaller room or like a corridor or a hallway next to a really big room. So there's space for stuff to spawn, but it's in a blind spot and it will favor it. So with that Jupiter mission, Kameria, we were able to get the spawns about 30 to 40 meters away, give or take. And when we messed up on this one, because we got too close to the door, we were getting those same spawns, but at the same time, you could see in blind spots on the Orokin tile set, stuff would spawn in like 10 meters away. If you made sure to look in a specific way for a while, it turns into very boring gameplay. I'm not gonna lie. Like, if you honestly are trying to like min-max spawns, you end up looking at a wall. I'm just telling you right now, like, the end result of min-maxing it is you end up looking at a wall. But in terms of like an enjoyable SP survival, a big room where you can kill quickly. If you're trying to do like a longer run, and eventually you know you're going to be doing like testing a build or something. Sorry about that. Look for a smaller room that is immediately attached to a big room with as free a space as possible. And a lot of like blind spots. So you're looking for something with like, say, on the Orokin tile set, something with a door between it, not something with like a permanently open gateway between each room. A door is highly preferable. And something where you can't see where the enemies could be spawning at, because it's going to try to not spawn enemies in that direction. So it's ultimately bro science. They haven't confirmed too much. But those were some of the techniques, and I showed some of the rooms that we would use. That Kameria Jupiter mission, I think it would be an understatement at this point to say I've probably spent less than 80 hours in that room. Especially farming like Hexanon and whatnot for the clan and the alliance. A lot of Hexanon, a lot of polymer. Salvage for the Helminth. It's a lot of a lot. So those are the sort of things that you're looking for. Figure out where you can stand and just sort of adapt your play style to that. And then obviously kill quickly is the big thing. But that one room on Lua, I ran my mouth and I didn't have time to go look for it because I was trying to explain that room. Where it's the agility drift, is a really, really, really good room to camp. And you just make circles. There's lots of blind spots, so you're not getting shot by everything. It helps neutralize the range on the enemy weapons, because if they can't see you, they're going to walk to where you could potentially be. So you would just going to do a lap around the platform. And it will sort of control where the damage is coming from. And more importantly, it will put it in your block angle. So it increases your survivability. Obviously, like, need to have like 2 or 3 Bennett's for picking something, right? It's just ultimately the ultimate answer to your question is that it's complete bro science. But those are some of the things that I've seen that like actively affect spawn rates. Is if you're trying to, and there also seems to be a favor on spawn rates based on what the host is. Not like their warframe, but um like spawns will favor where the host is. Seems to be the tendency. Because you could be like a third or a fourth person, and there have been times where it's like I've killed everything in my area and I'm like, where are the spawns? Well, they're spawning by the host. So it is what it is. The ultimate answer is bro science. There really isn't a concrete list. There's some stuff where people have been able to find like a statistically different increase in what the spawns are. But in terms of like DE, or I have figured out math to explain this is why this happens, like that doesn't exist. People have had to go through and test out builds and see what the final spawn rate is. And even then, there'll be times where like it's been a mission that you've run every day for like weeks. And you'll play it one time and be like, Jesus Christ, the spawn rate's so high. What happened? Like there seems to be like a hidden RNG dial, if you will, on whether they're going to screw you or not in terms of the spawn rate. So it's just there was like a Jupiter mission where like a really good kill rate is like 100 to 120 to 130 kills a minute. And there was a mission where the squad was killing over 200, which is like an incredibly significantly different amount that it's like, oh, I have to figure out why it's doing this. Because like the gold standard is about 100 kills a minute to make survivals sustainable to where you're not overly reliant on air supply. So that's the only thing I can say is if you're doing a survival and you look at your kill rate and you're at like 50, 60, 70, it might just be a modding issue at that point. So it depends. But good rooms, big room with unimpeded access, no brainer. And where you can't see the entire tile. Ideally, if there's something you can run around or like multiple levels, those are ideal. And managing enemy spawns, it's a pain in the ass. And leads to a boring play style, but make sure that there are blind spots. Make sure there's unimpeded access from where they spawn in at to you. And make sure to kill them as fast as possible to get the highest kill rate possible based on spawns. Because ideally you want them to spawn in and die instantly. But that's not how the game works, right? So it's bro science, but I hope this gives you a little bit of tricks. Like I showed you some of my rooms. But ideally, just play the game. If you notice a room seems to be especially easy, like say you find like a specific room and you're like, oh, I got to like 60 minutes and didn't need air supply in this room. Well, then use that room until you find a better one, but obviously run around the map a little bit, you know? Or at least do like a rotation C in each room and make note of what the kill rate is. Like on Lua, there's also another room. It's another drift mod. What is it? The laser room. Next to that, there's the portal where you drop down to get the drift mod. But it's a 2-story column, if you will. At the base of that is freaking fantastic, dude. Everything spawns up at the top, it runs to the edge, drops down, and you just kill it. There's a bunch of stuff on the other stories also that spawn right in. There's plenty of blind spots with ease of access to getting to you. The stuff on the bottom spawns right behind the doors. In the little cubby next to it. In the main room with the lasers. So you're in the room with like the portal going down. That's another good one. But it's because there's blind spots in rooms that are adjacent. So you are both not in the room and they can spawn in an area where you can't see them. And there's not a lot of crap on the floor for them to get caught on. So that ends up being a solid room also. So that's what you're looking for. A bunch of connectors, not a lot of stuff on the floor. provided you can do like 100 kills a minute, um, you should be good up to like an hour in Steel Path. So I think this is enough bro science on it. There really isn't too much um, DE reported hard math on it. Actually, I don't think there's any. But I think they have confirmed like a couple things where it's like, oh, they stopped having enemies spawning like on top of you, sort of thing. So it's like then you can infer they added like a perimeter to where stuff can spawn on top of you. So like that one guy and or that one, it wasn't a bombard, but it was maybe like an arsonist or something that spawned in 10 feet from us. We know that the spawn range is really low, and it probably had something to do with the fact that I wasn't looking at that spot. Literally, it was not on my screen for like a minute. So stuff like that, have a friend that's like a Necros, make him host, have him stand and look in a corner so you've got Desecrate going the entire time. I've done worse. So I hope this helps just one. It's a lot of bro science, and I can't really give you like DE approved like hard math on why something it is the way it is. It's just all troubleshooting and playing the game. But anyway, take it easy, dude. Y'all, if you made it this far, thank you. Have a blessed day, guys.